You.
And we're live, senators.
So this, we're live. Okay. Well, welcome back, everybody. We're talking with some of our Vermont's business leaders in the next hour. And as most people know, we're working on an omnibus economic development bill. It's actually in print now. I haven't gotten it out to the committee yet, but it's a very long bill and it's in draft form. I don't know exactly whether we're going to attach it to another bill. We're not going to do a committee bill. That's come and gone. So we'll have to attach it to another bill. But there are several vehicles we have in our committee that we could use for that purpose. And we're going to take the next 3 weeks to refine it. Probably, I'd like to get it out a week before. Actually, we have a week after town meeting. So if we get it out by town meeting, I think it should have sufficient time to get around to the other committees it has to go to. So I just felt it was a good time to touch base with our 4 witnesses here in terms of what they've been hearing, what they see, problem areas, other ideas they may have. I have welcomed all ideas. If you have an idea for economic development and we can get it into some sort of draft form, I would put it in for discussion as we go through many times this long bill, within reason, obviously. So that's an open invitation as well. But I'm going to start. I know you have a time constraint, right, Austin? I guess he had a really short time constraint.
And sorry, struggling to get to mute. No, I thought I was going to be late, so Scott was nice enough to put me at the tail end, but I'm here on time.
Okay. So let's start with Betsy because she knows she's testified before and has been following our work pretty closely. So it's it's a little bit amorphous this morning in terms of the specifics, which is good and bad because you have the ability to talk to whatever you want to talk about.
Well, thank you for having me. So I testified a couple of weeks ago on sort of the broad strokes of this and gave you sort of my perspective about what we are seeing in the industry and how businesses are not really recovered, frankly, still recovering. And as anybody knows with your personal finances, if you've had a major financial problem, it takes years and years to move beyond that. And I think that's what we're seeing with businesses. And I don't think that we're near the recovery stage yet. And I think that there is some continuing and ongoing need. So I wanted to come back to a couple of things, Mr. Chair, and provide you sort of with what I'd like to chat about, but recognizing your time if you wanted to direct me to something in particular. I think it's important. I'd like to talk about the Bridge Grant Program today with some specific solutions for you. I want to talk about the relocation and marketing program that Commissioner Pelham just talked about. And I'd be more than happy to talk about all the things in your bill. So let me try to go through those pieces. Let me talk about the bridge grant solution piece first. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So as I mentioned when I was in before, I think the 2 biggest problems with this program are the tax loss and the fixed monthly expenses as the criteria for applications. And so the proposal that I'm going to be talking about today was sent to you by Talina Shannon, and we are supportive of that. And I thought it might be helpful if I just tried to explain sort of specifically, I'm having some issues here between screens, but specifically what we're looking for. So as far as the formula changes go, we would like to see the elimination of those 2 criteria and instead think about making some changes on the thresholds. This is information that I sent to all of you previously, but the changes would be that grants would be provided to Vermont-based for-profit businesses that are open at the time of application, but it also includes those that are in operation on or before February 15th. We're talking about eliminating the tax loss and the 3 months fixed expenses as the limiting factors, and instead returning to the unmet need calculation, which worked well in rounds 1 and 2. We are well aware of the obstacles to doing that, but the need here is that we have $26 million that have been promised to small businesses who need it. The need has been proven, and we recognize that making changes to the formula is difficult, but moving this money to another program is not going to help these small businesses. So we feel very strongly that the money should stay as a granting program and not be moved to the capital investment program at all. Also,
can I interrupt, Betsy?
Yep.
I don't want to be a devil's advocate here, but I think a dialogue between committee members and yourself on this issue would be helpful to get to a positive place.
Sure.
Because we know very well the proposal that you're outlining. We've heard it. I've heard it at least 20 times yesterday. Got the same email about it. But I guess when I hear you want to get rid of tax loss and you want to add the fixed expenses, I'm with you to that point. The question is the substitution for that. I mean, have you ever considered like looking at operating loss and adding all the fixed expenses that you talk about? I know we have other issues that I think we both have concerns with the administration saying they don't want to do that, but but that they're not totally in control here. If we told
that's
them,
why we're here.
if we told them that we want you to do that as a fix, I'm just concerned that we're going too simplistic because the administration has said, and I don't even know if it doesn't sound like they'd even accept your solution, but they want it to be, it sounds like they don't want to do it at all. And they want to move it to the VITA program. So that's one question I have. And the other question I'd like you to answer is, what's wrong with the VITA program? As I understand it, I am sympathetic. Why start a whole new program? But as I understand it, the one thing that's attractive to me, I don't view it as a loan program. Maybe I'm missing it. It's a loan, it's a grant program in a loan program disguise. So eventually it's going to be a grant for everybody. And one of the attractiveness to it, even though I don't like the fact of creating a new program, is that my experiences with VITA, they're able to give applications more of an individualistic look as to which businesses are really in trouble. So I want to hear your thoughts on those things. I'm in the learning mode, quite frankly, on both of those questions.
So I'm going to school on tax filings as well. So I'm with you on the learning mode. I think, are we willing to accept some other formula change other than what we've put forward? I think that was, your first question. Are we interested in a dialogue? The answer is absolutely yes. What we know is that the program as it is set out now in statute isn't working really well. We know that because the commissioner came in and showed you those lovely pie charts that showed you how many people started an application and didn't finish it. The need is very clear. I don't think any of us, the administration, your committee, us, anybody is debating over the need. And the unmet need is the piece that we want to focus on. How we get at that, we're willing to have some of those conversations. But I think really it does need to focus on the unmet need. And so that dovetails into why not the VITA program. Senator Clark, yeah.
Sorry, can I just Mr. Chair, Randy, I think had a question, and I think I may have the same question Randy had. Oh, you didn't? I saw your hand up. I'm sorry. I apologize, Betsy. Sorry.
So the notion of let's figure out how to VITA to do these grants. Yes, there's the whole new program piece that I'm not enamored with, but the loan and the grant thing are very different. And especially if we're talking about the loans, if the loans are being given to you with the expectation that you're going to spend that money on something, and then when you do, it will be converted to a grant. We just think that that is a totally different program than grant funding going to you to fill something that you've already spent or didn't spend or delayed, proving your unmet need in the past, giving you money and saying, now you must spend it on something else. That is totally a loan, and it is a very different function than this. I'm not saying that the VITA program as proposed is a bad idea. It's just not swappable for the business grant idea. And we really absolutely do not want the remaining $26 million that has been promised to small businesses to be converted in any way into that other program. Much like we don't believe that that money should be put into the capital investment program either. We think the capital investment program is a great idea. I think that the $10 million that were put out, that there's $70 million of need. I don't think there's anything wrong with that program. It just shouldn't take the $26 million from the business grants into that program.
What is your understanding of what the administration is proposing in terms? They have 20 million for VITA, and I don't know what they're proposing for capital investment, but they're sort of have they actually walked away in terms of the budget documents you've seen for the $26 million, or is that just sitting there still going to be carried forward 26 or 25 into next year? Have they actually proposed moving that money either into VITA or into the capital investment program?
Yeah.
Yes, it's my understanding that the statute today, as it exists, gives the commissioner discretion to use the business grant funding for the capital investment program. Whether you do anything or not, that they have that ability today to do that. And that is their suggestion, because that need, it has been proven more greatly in the capital investment program. I say that the need has been proven in the business grant program. It's just that the way that we've structured the formula doesn't work. So I think there is need in both of those programs, but absent any action by this committee, the legislature, the agency has the ability to move money between programs. And I don't agree with that.
Right.
Well, I personally, from what I understand, and I had a long conversation with David Hall about this, I know you don't agree that they should do that. I don't know that they have the authority to do it. The language is very scurry. It's old. It wasn't meant to allow for this kind of situation. And I think our lawyers are saying there is no authority. And I have never heard Joan or anybody say that they absolutely thought they had the authority. They question whether they have the authority. And my response is, I don't think you do. And even if you think you do, I think you'd be wise to come to the legislature first before you start with that kind of money around.
And I think from what I've heard from the commissioner, I would agree with that perspective. And I'm just suggesting that we fix the formula in the business grants. And if we want to invest more money in the CIP, let's do that. And if we want to invest more money in the VITA program for something else, let's do that. There seems to be plenty of ARPA funds to allocate to various programs, but taking it out of the business grant program because we can't figure out the formula doesn't seem like the right action to us. And it sounds like there's a willingness to try to figure out a formula to get that money out the door to businesses who have proven need, frankly, through last spring. That's what the formula is based on, last spring. And meanwhile, the pandemic has continued and the pain has continued. So that's not even taking into account anything since last May.
So let me ask you a question that I've thought of. It sounds to me like the biggest concern is losing access to that money. Is there any reason why we wouldn't target that money to businesses that have current need? I mean, businesses have been waiting a long time for this. You know, there's all kinds of segments of our society that were hurt during the past pandemic, and they're not necessarily getting their past needs taken care of. I'm just wondering if we move the time frame up to look at, you know, September through February of this year compared to a non-COVID year, and base it on what people are currently suffering as opposed to what they suffered a year and a half ago. It just, you know, time has moved on. As our vice chair said, you know, there's an element in all of our society at this point as we're done with COVID. Let's move on. And I think that's part of what I think the administration's thinking is they want to move on. They want to look towards the future, towards capital investments. They don't want to start writing checks to people from the past. And I know that's not what people who are hurt in the past want to hear, but shouldn't we be putting this money towards businesses that are potentially going to close or going to fall into disrepair? If the money is there, is it best to use it to look at people's hardship a year and a half ago, or should we look at their hardship right now?
Again, I think we can do more than one thing. And I hear you, and I want to take that leading question and say, let's look to the future. But I cannot ignore the pain that people have been through. If you're getting the amount of communication that you say you're getting, I'm sure you're also getting enough of those stories for people to tell you what they've deferred in the past, how many small business owners, sole proprietors have gone without income themselves just to keep the doors open. There's nothing wrong with helping right that ship. And $26 million is not going to right that ship. But to some extent, we've promised those businesses that they're looking to fill that unmet need. As we think about moving forward, I think we can look at prospective work. If you want to look at, you know, creating that PPP-like program with VITA, that's a prospective looking thing. And you would probably say to those businesses, you need to spend that money on these types of things going forward. Many of the businesses that were already in the queue that already tried to apply for the grant money before, they're not thinking about the future. They're still trying to get over what has just happened to them. And I think we've done a lot of work in this state with a lot of the federal money that we've brought in to help individuals, to help businesses, to help organizations, programs. It's not ending. And I think that there are ways that we can look forward and still do this.
Okay, we're running out of time. So let's talk about
Mr. Chair,
yes, Senator Clarkson, let's be mindful of the time though, okay?
I'm absolutely mindful of the time, but I would like to ask Betsy, and she doesn't need to provide the answer right now, but I think we need help understanding what actually the unmet needs are. I mean, we have stories of all our constituents in these sectors, the creative sector, the lodging and hospitality sector. But has anyone collected, has the chamber or ACCD actually got a figure on what that unmet need is? Have people shared their actual, you know, because we talk about it as if everybody has that the need is very clear. I actually think to this committee, the need is clear anecdotally, absolutely. But do we have a notion in a concrete way of what that need is?
I think we can help you get some of that information, and we
That
can
would
do
be
that. We can do that offline if you'd like. It might not be as comprehensive of detailing every last unmet need, but I think the stories can be, we can put them into buckets of these are the 3 areas of greatest need. And then when it comes to the restaurant information, we have very, very clear information on the number of restaurants that did put forth that unmet need for the federal RRF program that were not not funded in Vermont. So in that sector, we have some very specific information, and we can just in the notion of time, we can do that. The one other thing that I would suggest, and perhaps Fred Kinney and Frank Coffey can talk to this, it's my understanding that ACCD utilized VITA and the RDCs in the application process previously, and that might be one way to help the Agency of Commerce get this money out the door again, is being able to utilize those groups to do sort of application review to move them through the process so that ACC doesn't feel that whole burden upon themselves. We've talked a little bit about the VITA-like program and the capital investment program. So your previous presentation with Commissioner Pelham was all about the new and remote worker incentive, the marketing, and the network building for capacity in regions. I'd really like to talk about that. I recognize that you have 3 other witnesses in 30 minutes. What would you like me to do?
I guess whatever you want to do, but we have heard about the latter programs. Unless you really want to underscore them, I would talk about the capital investment and the VITA program.
Yeah, so I think I would say is we should find a way to fund the capital investment program, but not with the $26 million of business grants. There is need there. There's some great, interesting, forward-thinking projects, and so we do like that. And we don't really see the need for the PPP-like program right now with VITA, especially if it's in a loan capacity. Just I will touch a little bit on the new and remote worker incentive program. It's a lot of money and it's really exciting. And I think when I came in earlier, I said that we needed a robust and sustained marketing effort. The incentives that you folks started are fabulous, and we need to continue that. But if we don't tell new people and constantly new people about that, filling that funnel, we'll never create the buzz that we're looking for, that Vermont is the place to move to. So that $6 million appropriation and specifically the $1 million in the base budget is super important. Along the marketing and network capacity building, I really like the type of structure that Commissioner Pelham has put together. The capacity building in regions is really important, because when you do not give organizations money that they can then hire staff to do the work, you're giving them money and saying to people who already have full-time jobs, do the best that you can. Or worse, you're not giving them money and saying, here's 10 people that want to come to your region, do your best. And they will do their best. It's an informal structure. But by putting money into regions and suggesting to those people that they need to hire somebody to do this work, it will get done. Nothing happens without a staff capacity to do that. So I am thrilled about this notion of capacity building, not just giving regions money to do more work, but actual capacity building. So I think that is important. And whether those are RDCs or chambers or other organizations, we just did an economic development conference last week. We focused it on the Vermont economy through a DEI lens. We brought all sorts of folks to make that business case for racial equity in Vermont, and listening to people who have moved here from away, people of color, it's not just in the recruiting process, it is in the retention process. And we have a problem with that in Vermont. And, you know, if I hear the term welcome wagon one more time, I mean, I don't even know what a welcome wagon is, frankly. Like, it sounds like something that was before my time. And we need part of that capacity building funnel is not only to attract people here, but once they get here, to give them that sense of belonging outside of work. Employers are doing the job recruiting. Employers are doing the job like making those people make sure that they have a good job and all the things inside that. But then when they go home to, you know, we heard from a gentleman, Gary Scott, who moved here from Texas, and he lived in his hotel room for 7 months. And, you know, I talked to Dr. Jackie Hunter, who moved here 3 months ago, and she was wondering when she would ever see another person that looked like her. And she was like, is it going to be a week? Is it going to be a month? And she said, I just endlessly Googled things about that I'm interested in. And it took me a while to make that connection. And it would be great if Vermont did something like that. So thinking about that capacity and the recruiting and getting them here, and thinking about the retention and inclusion piece when they're here, not only in work, but outside of work, I think is a really important component. And these dollars, I love the fact that these dollars are over 3 years to build that capacity and help those regions think beyond just this 12 months. Oh, if I'm going to get this for 3 years, I can do these types of things. So I think that that's super, super important. I will stop there.
Well, thank you. I was going to say, is the term on the wagon or off the wagon? And
Yeah, Scott.
I remember not so fondly when you were off the wagon. I'm a great victor over me 30 years ago that set you off on your career where you beat me by 1 vote. I'm sure you remember that. But you were very happy after that vote. We all
I do, yes. Thank you for bringing that up, Senator. It was a very long time ago.
We all witnessed it. Okay, personal aside. Let's move on. Thank you, Betsy. Let's hear from Frank. Frank, we don't get in here very often, so let's give him some time. And Frank, the floor is yours. Whatever you'd like to talk about, you sort of get the gist of where we are. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts are.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for your service to our state, especially during the past few years. The things that you've collectively done with the governor, Senator Leahy, Senator Sanders, and Congressman Welch have really been meaningful. And I don't think you get enough credit for doing what you're doing, but thank you. I have the good fortune to chair a bank board of a small community bank up in Senator Brock's area, the People's Trust Company, and have been able to see how the PPP program has made such an incredible difference during that awful time during COVID initially, and everything President Biden came through and got through the U.S. Congress. The payments and support for Americans, especially for those struggling during this period, kept the economy going. And our Vermont legislature, the governor and the Vermont legislature tagged on to that, and everything you've done, you know, we're still pretty strong, but those that are struggling are still struggling. And I don't think we can lose focus on that whatsoever. The VITA forgivable loan program, I don't know much about. I haven't had time to talk with Commissioner Goldstein in detail about all of the initiatives here, but I will tell you, if it does resemble some likeness to PPP, and it is going for lower threshold dollar amounts, I think we're not hearing from a lot of small businesses who are just in trouble, and we're not going to find out about them until it's almost too late. So this might be a lifeline to some of those small businesses that are in your home districts and regions. Betsy's probably, I'd say Austin and Betsy are probably more in touch with what the need will be in their with their memberships. But I'm just thinking of convenience stores and other small mom and pop type operations that have been struggling along during the whole pandemic, that haven't had the ability to write applications, or they end up getting in trouble and then can't dig their way out of it. So we're a long way out of the economic period that we're in. Some of the other things the governor proposed, I think, are really good. The project-based TIF, I know that you have been focused on for the past few years. I really see that as something that would be helpful to our state.
Frank, can I interrupt you there for a second?
Sure.
Because I haven't really, this committee was the leader in the project-based TIFs, and we've been fighting it for several years. But I got to be honest that I sort of lost a lot of energy for it, because with the infrastructure bill and all the money that's out there that could just pay for these water systems outright. What's the rebuttal to that?
I think it remains to be seen of where the infrastructure money is actually going to go. There's so much need for infrastructure investment in the state, from roads to water, sewer, stormwater. I don't think there's going to be a problem fulfilling requests and access to that money for municipalities throughout the state. Where the project-based TIF might be, like, I'll just, like downtown St. Albans or downtown Winooski, that really didn't have to happen. Both were blighted areas, or areas that were becoming blighted. And the TIF program made them areas of opportunity. So, for Fred knows this project better than I do from his years of service at Vepsi. But I think a project-based TIF would enable a smaller municipality to be able to target in on a project that could be a catalyst for new economic opportunity that just wouldn't happen and might not happen for infrastructure funding. So I guess I'd look at it in that way, Senator.
Okay.
Yeah. The last thing I want to talk about, and I'll just yield my time because you've got so many other people waiting to talk, is just workforce. I served with Senator Clarkson on the state workforce board, chaired the board for Governor Shumlin for a couple of years, and then for Governor Scott for a year. Then stepped off. I'm still on the board, but I can't tell you how pleased I was to hear Governor Scott lead the state of the state with talking about career and technical education, and just want to bring us back to the data that really shows that over 50% of those that go to high school in Vermont do not go on to further education when they graduate. And so, these numbers are pretty simple. We're only graduating 6,000 young Vermonters from high school every year. If over 3,000 of them are not going on to any further education, I will tell you, those are the 3,000 that stay in Vermont. And a number of those children, I know my daughter had addiction issues and she's no longer with us. So I certainly understand the ravage of addiction in Vermont, but I'll say with conviction that I think a lot of those young Vermonters are struggling with addiction and other issues. A lot of the boys stopped paying attention in school and then just got passed by. It seems like we keep students in school, and if they behave well, then we just keep them there. And I don't think they're learning the life skills that they need to learn to be productive members of society. So as you look for workforce development, I'd urge you to look at anything the governor's proposing or anything that legislative committees and legislators come up with to make career technical education full-time in Vermont. Right now, we're only open to juniors and seniors, but if we incrementally opened it to 9th through 12th grade, then we would have the opportunity of developing curriculum and giving access to curriculum that gives skills and a career path to those young Vermonters that are in high school so that they can earn a meaningful income so they can support themselves. So it remains a top priority at GBIC to focus on workforce.
It's been Frank, it's been one of our top priorities in this committee, and we actually have done a bunch of work towards that, and there are pilots out looking at all sorts of issues around CTE, but definitely the last couple of years have been pushing more work down in the middle school to prep them for 9th and 10th grade engagement with CTE.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. I just think everything's gotten worse in the pandemic in terms of opiates have gotten worse. The education experience that the children had, like those in education have been heroes, trying to keep the system going and keep innovating and being agile to educate people, but it's been really hard on the students. And so I think this is Vermont's one of our greatest challenges, but one of our greatest opportunities, because these students are here and we can really do something. So thank you for your focus on this, and thanks for all you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Frank. That's helpful. You may know that the House, we've sort of divided up the workload, and the House is dealing with workforce capacity, but by looking at their schedule, they're taking it really seriously and spending a lot of time on it. So we're hopeful we'll get a good bill from them at crossover. But it reminds me how important workforce is in terms of economic development. So thank you for that. Any other questions for Frank? And I hope we can call upon you as we work on this bill. You're a good resource to this committee. Okay, let's hear from Fred. Let's see what time it is. I think if we can keep things down to like 10 minutes each for you and Austin, we can have time for a short break.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
It's 11:45, and I sadly have a pretty hard stop at noon.
Okay.
Fortunately,
All right.
as do I.
Yep, we'll stop at noon.
Great to be with you again and to be with my distinguished colleagues from around the state. I'm Fred Kenny, Executive Director of the Addison County Economic Development Corporation, and I'm also the current president of the RDCS of Vermont. I sent you two documents. One is a document about what RDCs are and what they do, and it also has the map of the RDC regions on the back. All information you all know, but just so you have it for reference. I also sent you our 2022 legislative priorities, some of which are covered in this bill. So on this bill, generally the RDCs of Vermont support what's in there. I'm working off a draft that I saw last night. Don't know if it's the same one you have, but many of those proposals in there align with what's in our legislative priorities. We're hearing from businesses in our regions that there's still a need for assistance to stay open and to recover. I heard from Chris Bullock at the Chipman Inn in Ripton. He was deemed ineligible under the current way the recovery grants are set up. It doesn't allow for his circumstances, and he didn't get any funding. As you heard from Betsy, there's many other stories from the hospitality and other sectors along those lines. So the RDCs would support, fixing the criteria, adding flexibility to that program, and retaining some level of funding for that program for the entities that would be eligible under the new criteria.
Fred, can I ask you a question from your perspective as a regional development corporation may not be in sync with an individual businesses. If we took let's say everybody could agree on a criteria for need, and we just made it more current than what has been proposed, would the goal of trying, you said some of these businesses may be on the edge of folding. And I'm very concerned about not losing business in the state of Vermont, as opposed to, it may not seem fair. I mean, some people may have not taken pay or found a way to survive in the past, but I'm just wondering where the RDCs, if they were making the decision, whether they would focus more on helping the businesses that are currently in need, as opposed to businesses that may have suffered in the past but are now on their feet.
I think a lot of them are going to be the same. Those that are currently in trouble have also had difficulty over the past year or two.
I agree. I agree with that. But if we did come across businesses that have survived and are doing well now, should we be using some of the money to pay them for their past hurt?
No, I think we would agree that the focus should be on those who are in need right now, that have needs right now.
Okay.
And we don't have a lot of information on this forgivable loan program. I haven't seen a lot of detail. You're hearing from Joan later this week, and neither of you. Yeah, and Joan's going to talk to the RDCs on Friday about it. But like I probably agree with Betsy that let's look at everything, and if put funding into different programs, but that might work. But they're still going to have to apply as if it's a loan. They're still going to be underwriting. A lot of the small businesses that are in trouble aren't in a position to be applying for a loan, even if it might be forgiven.
Right.
And if there are criteria that would trigger forgiveness, why don't we look at that as maybe the criteria for a grant instead? I guess it's just adding another layer of process that it doesn't seem necessary. So we would not support taking all the money and putting it somewhere else. Like Betsy, we would support, let's leave some money in this program and fix it. Let's look at the administration's proposal on more money for the CIP and put some more money into that program. We're following that program very closely. We strongly support it as a way to assist with rebuilding. We've worked closely with all the businesses and projects that applied to that program because they're the priority projects in our regions. As you know, the applications was 6 times what's available. So we support putting more ARPA funds into that program. And we also support what I think is in the bill right now, which removes the net revenue benefit as the sole grant amount determinant. A cost benefit should be done, but it should be one of the criteria that they consider for approval of a grant, a CIP grant.
Yeah, your list is great, Fred. I mean, you've sent us, it's on our web page, his funding, the RDC funding priorities. They're great. They're right here.
There's a lot in there that is not in this bill. So it'd be great to have a chance to come back and talk about some of those. The grand list enhancement program is intriguing. We're just seeing the details on that today, generally supportive, especially if it can work in concert with the CIP program, with project-based TIF and the work that you're doing on housing. And we also support what's in the bill to fix the regular TIF program. And we strongly have, again, this year, support the project-based TIF concept. We've been in to testify that over the past 2 years. I brought in Middlebury to talk to you about that, how it would benefit them last year. ARPA and the infrastructure bill is a lot of money, but it's not going to pay, it doesn't pay for everything under infrastructure, and it's not going to provide all the money for the whole cost of infrastructure that will encourage development in downtowns. TIF can be used as a match, for example, for some of these other programs. So we're still very supportive of that program. So I'll stop there. I mean, I have 5 or 6 proposals that other economic development ideas, but they're in our legislative priorities. And if you want, I can come back.
No, it's very helpful.
So let me just ask you on the project-based TIFs. I mean, we didn't have any problem getting that through the Senate. Ran into problems in the House, but and we probably could pass it again. But the poster child, I mean, Middlebury did come in, but the poster child was always Westford. And their wastewater system was like a little shy of $1 million. Why couldn't we write a check with infrastructure money to Westford for $1 million?
And I'm sure they're applying for that. But they've got other infrastructure needs as well. And there are other towns. I mean, originally the project-based TIF was important for small towns because they don't have the capacity to do a full-blown TIF.
Right.
But it's also about single projects, not just small, towns that don't have a lot of capacity, but those as well. But also, if you've got a single project, you don't want to do a TIF that involves your whole designated downtown. You just want to do one project, and that might be a medium-sized town like Middlebury or Manchester or something. So it's both of those things. It would be important to both types of those towns.
I mean, I, for one, am willing to go forward with it, but, I guess you're agreeing that in the scheme of things, I mean, as you know better than anybody, we run into problems on the TIF concept, and we're always restricting it to the size of on this project-based TIF, we're restricting it to the size of the project, how many towns can apply. It seems like this infrastructure money can do a lot more good for the kinds of projects that project-based TIFs were designed for in the near term. Maybe it's good to have this economic development tool, which I fully support, in the long term, but it seems like the pressing need for it has been lessened substantially, and it's going to make it even harder for us to get it through the House.
Yeah, I understand that. And I think it decreases the need a little bit, but not substantially. You still need it, and to be a companion to that funding and a long-term financing tool.
Okay. Any other questions for Fred? I know I'm sorry for how short the time is, but well, if no other questions, let me say, I don't have people's pictures up here. So anybody else have a question? Let me see, I can pull it up. Okay, let's see. I don't see any hands. Okay, so let's move on to Austin, and then we'll take a short break after this.
Yeah, then we have, actually, then it's 12. It will be after 12, and we have Senate Democratic Caucus at 12.
Am I off by an hour here?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Time flies when you're engaged and stimulated in your work.
Well, no, and I need to look at our agenda. Are we cutting other people off our agenda?
Well, we have, Austin has 3 minutes.
Okay, we can have you back, Austin.
Okay, I already put a hold on my calendar for tomorrow morning.
Good.
Go ahead.
Well, to be quite honest, Mr. Chair, I don't know if I can do justice to these issues in 2 minutes.
Okay, let's give people more time. I am off. Oh my God. Okay, let's yes, because people have hard stops. We'll figure in at least a 20-minute slot for you this week, Austin, and hopefully your schedule will allow for that. It's my bad on that.
One thing I would just say, in the minute, because it might be timely, is I would say that the economic recovery grants were kind of a solution to some of the blind spots of PPP. And I think it's worth considering when weighing the differences between the potential veto program and reforming and renovating the criteria under the GAP grants or economic recovery grants, whatever you want to call them. There were some blind spots in PPP where folks were falling through the cracks. There's a level of acumen and an ability to navigate loans that was difficult for some folks. And you actually, to your credit, recognized that and built economic recovery grants. So I just wanted to bring that up because no one had brought that up to date.
Okay.
Oh, we appreciate, and that's, as you know, part of the impetus behind them.
Yep.
I apologize for the timing. For some reason, I thought we started at 9. We started at 10, now that I remember. Okay. Thank you all. And I know people have to run, so we'll see you all tomorrow.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.